Hello and welcome to my video on the dark side of Crestone, Colorado. This video begins and ends with the Baca Grande Property Owners Association. Crestone, Colorado is a beautiful community with beautiful people, but paradoxically there is a very sinister influence, and it is the Baca Grande Property Owners Association. I can only speculate as to how this happened. This is a small rural mountain town in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of the San Luis Valley in the southern part of Crestone, Colorado. Like in most small towns, there's not a lot of drama, and if you want drama, you kind of have to create it. But how this happens in homeowners association and property owners association can be a combination of quite a few aspects. Property owners association tend to have despot type control over the owners. And if you have unethical, immature, or even psychopathic people in those positions, they could actually pick and choose those they might like to harm, because maybe some of them get a thrill out of scaring a few people or exerting power over a few people. There might be others that are just chemically impaired and their judgment is extremely poor. And while others are good-meaning folk, they don't want to dispute what their neighbor is doing. If you do become targeted by the Baca Grande Property Owners Association, you must know that it's there are no holds barred. They feel the ends justifies the means. So if they feel you are deserving of their wrath for a violation or standing up for your rights, your civil rights, maybe legal rights, then they think making up violations, making up bad behavior is perfectly justifiable. Suing you on a fraudulent basis is absolutely justifiable. And in this documentary, I'd like to show that in the last 2 years, at least the current presidents, Steve Dawsonback and Ed Sabarbaro, along with some of the management and administrative personnel, have spent almost $1 million on these fraudulent lawsuits and have effected no improvements in the community. And I'm just trying to say there's a better way. For instance, you may see a lot of homes here that just are unfinished and left abandoned for years and years. And you could see homes like this that they are a shop owner or work on cars and trucks and might have a lot in their yard, and they go unnoticed by the POA. Or this house that has lots of abandoned cars. It's been here for years and years. And once again, a lot of sun is in my vision, so I'm trying to get a clear depiction of just a lot of stuff that goes unreported and unbothered with. Just looking at some junk. Campers, abandoned little trailers. Somebody works for the fire department maybe, and is able to keep a home like this with no consequences. And this is some kind of rather abandoned cars. What is that? Some junk just sitting up against the front of the house. And I know that this property has been the subject of very costly lawsuits. I would say an audit would show that the Baca Grande POA has spent anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000, excuse me, suing this man for a property that is worth maybe $100,000 now, maybe. And I know this person. He's an intelligent man, and he would have responded to respectful treatment and honest, ethical negotiations. And this is just a sad situation that our community has had to pay for, perhaps somebody's pride that got screwed up in the matter and had to initiate vindictive lawsuits. And the sun is really bright, but I hope this shows up. You might see things that are like these. Just a home with a tarp over it. So there's pallets in the front yard, building materials still strewn about. And here's my up the street neighbor. Again, this is just so hard to videotape. It's fine with me. But these are acceptable things by the POA. You know, a concrete mixer left out, and old rusty campers, and various things strewn about. But my clean house was the subject of violations. Another look like long time work in progress. This home belongs. He has not paid POA fees in several years. He has not filed for extension permits in several years. He had a problem with his dogs menacing the neighborhood and heavy metal music into their yard after they complained about the dogs. And the interesting thing about they has never sued him. In the 10 years that his home has gone unfinished. Now the front story is that his home is hidden by trees. But the backstory is that he had a kind of professional and business relationship at one time with Steve Dawsonbag. And the backstory is that he has evidence of fraud on them, so he is pretty much enjoying taking all the time he needs to build his home. So at this point, started in 2011, his home is, ooh, that's an interesting site. Yeah, his home is acceptable. Sure, by POA standards. I don't see why they need to build on my property, even though I was just fixing and flipping. So, yeah, his poor neighbors ended up moving from the harassment, so, and that's it. 10 years in the works, and it's coming along. No permits to extend, yet they are suing people who don't have evidence of fraud on them. So for instance, you may see a lot of homes here that just are unfinished and left abandoned for years and years. And you, some other look like long time work in progress. And seems like this home that's been here for years and years. And one might ask why this particular person is not admonished for maybe some unsightly cars abandoned on his property, and it might be because he's friendly with people on the POA, or he's related to people on the POA. It could be that he's somebody they know, or that he's not black, he's not Hispanic, he's not a single woman or somebody new that they just don't know. If they don't know you, it doesn't bother them to hurt you, and that may be just a good enough reason for some of them. So, and here's another owner with a bunch of tires in the yard, and a porta potty, and a container, and again, probably left alone. You will see a lot of homes like this, just kind of bare wood on the side, unfinished, and if they're struggling and can't afford to fix it speedily, that's okay with me. I guess my point is that they're just targeting some and leaving others alone. And here's another thing you'll see often, just abandoned school buses in people's yards, and trucks and other vehicles, and they'll be there for years and years. They're not a problem to the POA. And like I said, to know why would be maybe they friendly with people on the POA, maybe they're not of the ethnicity, color, or gender that may be bothersome, or like I said, maybe because they're known. There are some people that have no conscience about harming people, they just don't know. And again, it's all speculation, but I guess my point is that they target people. And I do have to say that when I first moved here, I didn't believe it. I heard the stories. The POA's corrupt, they're horrible, they destroy people, they're vicious, they're ruthless. And I thought, oh, people are paranoid. Somebody told me to record them, audio tape them, videotape them, whenever you can. And I thought, what a bunch of paranoid, silly people. But I am so sorry I didn't heed that advice. It is a place where a fence like this is acceptable. And that school bus, and this is my place, the one that was in need of suing I consolidated my lots and cleared a little bit of space here for it, and entry drive to it, not knocking down any trees, but much like my neighbor down the way here, he has a similar setup in which he never got a permit for, but apparently the laws are interpreted as they see fit. It all started when I applied for a windmill permit or wind turbine, and apparently they don't allow wind turbines in the chalets, which this is chalet 1. I'm not sure what the reason is, but I looked up the laws and it said that renewable energy cannot be restricted or prohibited by any homeowner association, property owners association. So I pointed that out to them, and then a lot of problems began. My permits went ignored and unanswered. What I was doing in this consolidated lot was putting in a prayer space and a little meditation place, and that went ignored. But again, it was a First Amendment right, so I got started on it. And pointing out your legal rights is considered rude behavior there, and so the violations started pouring in. I was cited for having pallets in my backyard, this little garden bridge here, which is not a construction project and not anything that would require a permit, but they just start making up stuff. I had a little plastic portable fold down little hammer and stakes aesthetic little covering around the propane tank, and they cited that along with a pile of sticks that was collected for firewood and a bunch of other stuff, a shed that I had, whereas the sheds are allowed if they are painted the same color as your home, but they just determined it was not. So the thing is that they sort of use the violations to sort of blackmail you into I don't know, it's just a bullying technique. So my neighbor over here is an older gentleman, and you'll see this a lot. These some of these older residents were important in their time and still want to feel important, so he complained about several things I did, that including this lot clearing that I did. And even though he has the same thing, and told me himself that he didn't have a permit for it. So as we walk, so I went to a meeting to answer the violations and tried to videotape because I was dealing with so much legalities, the renewable energy, the First Amendment, the multiple manufactured violations, the trespassing on my property, my right to privacy. So I tried to videotape, and I was told to turn it off, that videotaping wasn't allowed. Now let me say that videotaping is not allowed for the obvious reasons, and unfortunately I complied, but the obvious reason being that they can say that you did anything in that meeting. They can say that you said things that were insightful or threatening, or they they use that as leverage against you. So I should have kept videotaping. I was just naive. At that point, Connie Estrada, when I turned it off, Connie Estrada told me I was to leave or she was going to have me arrested. And I was shocked, very upset, the thought of that they could summon deputies to a paying, clean member of the community and have you physically handled and hauled out of there. It is against the law to do that. It's coercion and threats, and I told Connie to get off her power high. And later, a couple of members that were present committed perjury for Connie and said that I threatened her. And I'm a registered nurse of 35 years, a property investor of 15 years. I know better than to overtly threaten somebody, but unfortunately, I quit recording to comply with their request. And from the minute I ever had any contact with the POA, they were very rude. Dennis Eiselman told me if I put that windmill up, I better get a good attorney. So they proved true all the warnings people gave me about them. If I had felt I was a prisoner going before the parole board, or dealing with prison guards, or a subject going before royalty, if you behave that way, you probably will get along. I stood up for my rights, and but I'm speechless because that was just the beginning. I want to show you my little drive that he has that's similar to mine. So it starts here, and he drives his camper over there. So he never got a permit for that. So this is my beautiful view, Mount Challenger. So I leave that committee meeting quite upset at being treated like that. I was summoned to another meeting of the Land Use Department of Saguache County in the banquet hall of the Property Owners Association. This was around June 26th. So I show up and nobody's there. The door is locked. I so much do not want to be in the presence of this employee, Connie Estrada, that I don't even go to the main building and ask what happened to the meeting. I just leave. And when I leave, she's on my bumper. So I kind of pull over and let her pass me. Well, she pulls over, forces me to pass her, and she gets on my bumper again. So I pull over and start my camera recording. She passes me. I let her get up ahead of me quite a ways. Well, she lets the traffic pass her and goes about 5 miles an hour, forcing me to be behind her. I wouldn't pass her again because that seemed like she was playing some game. So I followed her for a ways because she was going exactly where I was going. And although I thought something was really up and probably should have diverted my travels, I thought, no, my stubbornness said, go about your day. So I followed her ways and then became uneasy. I stopped, turned around, at which time she backed up and yelled something at me, but I drove home. So probably less than an hour or two, the police were at my door charging me with harassment, following her in a attempt to alarm her. Then I had restraining orders. Then violation of restraining orders because I had sent emails to the POA regarding this and my property, and she happened to be in that group email. But sadly enough, I tried to go to the police department in July of that year, 2019, and show my evidence, the evidence that the meeting was there, that Connie knew about it, that she was following me, that she was passing me and on my bumper at one point. And anyway, Steve Hansen just threw me out. He said, yeah, you figure it out, and if you get off your charges, then you can come back. So I went through, started getting threatening text messages from Connie Estrada's daughter, Morgan Harris, and started texting back to try to get her to admit who she was. I'm sure she only got my number from Connie. And I also know Connie has 2 DUIs and a long history of methamphetamine and continues to struggle with her issues. So as somebody in recovery, I was kind of encouraging her daughter to encourage her mother and maybe contact her probation officer or her employer to get some help, so I wouldn't have to press charges against this daughter that I can imagine probably didn't have a very happy childhood. But it wasn't until the hearing of one when Connie, in her state of mind, admitted her daughter was sending me those text messages and complaining that I was responding in this manner. So there I finally had proof that she was doing that. But oddly enough, in the court case, the judge was a member of the Baca Grande Property Owners Association. Yes, the judge was a member of the Baca Grande Property Owners Association. Didn't volunteer that information. I found it out much later. Kathleen Kennedy got on the stand and said, yes, I overtly threatened her. And Joe Buckley got on the stand and kind of said I threatened her, and said I told her not to trespass on my property again. That was my threat. But believe it or not, I did not do well in court that day. And I just, of course, shocked, mortified. I had planned to make Crestone my home, and this was probably all happened within a year of my moving here. So there I had proof, finally, that it was her daughter texting me. They were texting me things like, you're a pedophile. Apparently they had been on my Facebook page and thought I was supporting Biden because I didn't support Trump, which I support neither. But I think both parties are hopelessly corrupt. But I did have some pointed out some things about Trump that apparently, I have to say Crestone has a lot of Q believers here, and felt that because I was not with that, of that belief, that I must be a pedophile. So I was, you're going to be arrested again, was the threat, and FUB, all hell's going to break loose on you. And I moved away from Crestone because I really became concerned about just the insanity going on in the world, and that they would have me arrested again. Because apparently all Connie has to do is say I did something. She doesn't need any proof. And of course she has people that will commit perjury for her. So I moved away, truly in fear of being falsely imprisoned at that point. And was willing to just let it go. I don't want to charge her or her daughter with harassment. I want to leave. I don't want to stay in this energy. But they would not stop. Connie falsified my account. She failed to acknowledge payments I had made, over $1,000 worth of payments I had made. She failed to acknowledge any permits I had submitted. I did go to the appeals committee, and they overturned everything, only to have them reinstated and me sued for them. They would not communicate with me in such a way that I knew what they even wanted or needed. It was just a cruel joke. And and the joke was on me. So, finally, I do call the Swatch County Police Department again and want charges of the harassment filed for the text messages. And I also have proof of the perjury. Connie had stated time and again that I tried to ram her with my car. Now, this is important. She said that I was actually not only following her, but trying to ram her with my car. Okay. The videotape showed clearly I didn't do that, but that didn't matter to the judge. That didn't matter to the Swatch County Police Department. Just a little white lie she made up. No big deal. You know, just her perception. So I wanted her charged with perjury. She didn't acknowledge that I was there for a meeting that she failed to tell me was canceled. She didn't acknowledge that she was following me twice, but I tripped her up and got her to admit it. And none of that mattered. None of it matters at all. So I called the police department again and want these harassment charges filed to have equal protection under the law. But like I said, I always just wanted to walk away from it. But now they're extorting me out of, I think they're $13,000. And yes, it's close to $13,000. I know I am trying to sell my home, and I'm going to have to pay them $7,000 just to get away from them. And it's worth it to me to get away from this energy and try to recover it through lawsuits afterwards. But I'm saying that these fraudulent lawsuits have cost the POA $1 million in 2 years. And what could have been done with that money? They could have, maybe a community center with hot tubs or hot pools and a gym and a juice bar, and maybe negotiate with the homeowners or clean up the blight and charge the homeowner. Maybe form a negotiation committee that is you try to negotiate with the homeowner before filing these lawsuits, and with an attorney that's only going to advise the POA in a manner that brings money into his firm. This is a flagrant abuse of community money that could have been avoided, and the enabling of what I feel is a very impaired employee. But I'm here packing up my place I thought I would make my home. But I will take the lessons I've learned and make them into something good. And wish you all well. To my neighbor that felt the need to tell on me all the time, I did want to say that I know he works in the community for cash and pays his workers cash and fails to pay any taxes to the town, the state, or the government, the federal government, and why would I tell on him for that? That's none of my business. So maybe before you, funnily enough, he's the one that came to me and said he felt the POA should be abolished. And then he was telling on me every other day for petty things. So to him I say, the golden rule. But I'm not going to do unto you what you did to me. I'm just leaving. At the beginning of this video, I said I would like to show where almost $1 million has been spent, and a lot of that has gone to fraudulent lawsuits. I tried to answer all the complaints in the proper way. I even videotaped myself answering them and sent them all registered mail. Garden Bridge. Garden the garden fence,
artistic kit,
a pile of sticks.
palette.
There was a shed at one time parked in my drive.
I'm sending this registered or certified mail. June 19th or 20th. I think it's the 19th. 18th, 19th, 2019.
June 19th, 2019. And finally, I wanted to give some evidence of fraud by employees or members of the Baca Grande Property Owners Association. The definition of fraud by Colorado law says is whenever you engage in a wrongful act with the intent to gain an unfair or undeserved benefit for yourself and or intentionally cause harm or loss to another person through such an act. So, what the Baca Grande Property Owners Association did early on was refuse to acknowledge payments. You see of 7/9/2019, $420. 1/8/2019, $444. And there's my statement, the 1st of January 2020. They bring a previous balance forward of $430 and have 2020 $836. So begins with not acknowledging payments, and even though you send the canceled check, continue to not acknowledge payments. Here was a appeals committee meeting of October 24th, 2019, when they say they never received a permit for the driveway, apply for a driveway permit, and somehow the carport and fence finalized by the POA. They did dismiss the fines, but the fines were just reinstated and I was sued for them. So I do want to show that the driveway permit was submitted March the 20th of 2019. It was submitted at least 7 times, 7th driveway application. There was, with all the accompanying documents. I'm not the only one that has had this type of problem. The POA is corrupt. Gabe's Mobile Auto Repair posted this on Facebook. Connie says one thing, then does nothing. She accuses without evidence or even telling you what the issues are. Connie was supposed to do. She sat there and lied to our face in some makeshift hearing. Connie was to send us papers to finish the permit for the house. She never did that either. So I'm not the only one that has had these issues. I sent emails about my payments, about the harassment. Please stop allowing Connie Estrada to manipulate my account and my file. I've repeatedly asked for copies of my files, begging them to be ethical, honest, and sign off on these issues. Various email, just constant emails to have documentation of the fraud, and then they just quit responding to my emails. They killed the sale of my home over and over again. And who gets to file the lawsuit? Who gets to sign her name on the lawsuit? That is Connie Estrada, the land use administrator. To back up, I applied for a prayer space, which required a driveway. I applied for, I put up a little garden bridge. I had a little plastic portable fence around my propane tank just for aesthetic use. It was not a construction project. It easily picked up and moved. Had little stakes that you hammered in the ground. This was a little garden bridge that could not be seen from the road. Therefore, it was required to trespass on my property to get a picture of it. It was down in a ditch area, and it was cited as a violation. These pile of sticks was cited as a violation. Again, I sent email after email, registered mail after registered mail. Purpose of this email is to show I have accurate documentation of communication and attempts to reconcile my account, and to those complicit in falsifying my account. So just a stack of meanwhile, more of the violations would have been a stack of pallets on top of each other in my backyard where no one could see. That's my house, pretty much clean and tidy compared to any neighbor's houses. So then I looked at the financials. I did offer mediation or binding arbitration. They offered mediation. What they do with mediation is you have to pay for it, and then they use your money and my money to pay for them to come and just have an additional advantage over you, causing you to pay for more money, and at the same time they'll just refuse any honest negotiation. So they will say that I refused mediation. I did not. I wanted binding mediation, so they would have to be responsible for their actions. They refused it because they would have lost and not caused me maybe $10,000 in lawyers' fees to fight them. But if you look at the financials, you will see 2018, 2017, please check my math, legal, general, legal, reimbursable, and there's liability insurance. Now still, half of 2018 is just missing. Can't find it. So, but it's fair to say Steve Dawson back, and then later Ed Barbaro took over in 2018 or 2019. So here's the financials for 2019, just an unbelievable uptick in spending for legal, professional, liability insurance. Connie Estrada and Steve Dawsonback are being personally sued for fraud and civil rights violations, and they're using our money, your money, for their legal defense. So here's 2020 now, a really crazy uptick. See if I can get that in a better. You can find these on the website, frontsteps.com. There it is. So I did do a little chart that shows, darn it, that shows the spending. So 2017, 2018, legal and liability insurance, half of 2018 still missing, but for 2 years, $211,000. Let's go to those 2 years. Steve Dawsonback, Ed Barbaro, and Connie Estrada get to run crazy with the money. You've got 2019, 2020, $844,000, and that is with December still missing. And I think if we finally get the results, we're going to be close to $1 million. Now you have to ask, what could have been done to improve the community with $1 million? Could we have negotiated with the homeowner to maybe clean up the blight? Could they have acknowledged communications from homeowners to acknowledge permits and not make these lawsuits some personal vendetta? Could we have maybe used that money to start a community center with a heated pool, a gym, a juice bar, a coffee shop, maybe some place for us to enjoy our community? Could we have encouraged people to grow Rocky Mountain junipers to provide privacy hedges, maybe for homes that are struggling? But going back to the land use administrator that is ignoring permits and communications and falsifying accounts. She has 2 DUIs. She has a long history of methamphetamine, drug and alcohol abuse. She is the fire chief of Saguache's niece. So, don't want to disparage anybody's illness. I'm in recovery myself, but it doesn't excuse somebody committing fraud against the citizens, the paying, clean citizens of the Baca Grande Property Owners Association and Crestone community. Connie apparently gave my number to her daughter, Morgan Harris, and encouraged her to text me. So I responded to try to get her to reveal her identity. She did somewhat. Of course, this one says, "Look, bitch, this ain't Connie. She wouldn't waste her time texting your ass, but guess what? I will." So, it was several texts like that. Crazy bitch. Leave people alone. Of course, Connie convinced her she was a victim and needed her daughter's help. Another friend of mine was getting texts too from, say, Morgan Harris. And then other anonymous texts went to other friends of mine that were helping me and trying to get information from the POA that would have helped me. So when they were onto this, they started harassing those people, which is really sad. This anonymous text came from someone that was identified as a Facebook friend of Connie's. And disclaimer here, I am not a Republican or a Democrat. I believe both parties are hopelessly corrupt, but I was posting some stuff about Trump this day on my social media, and I got this spouting off your fake ass bullshit, libtard logic, you're a pedophile supporter of rape, crawl back in your hole before I let the authorities know who are looking for you exactly where you are. So I left the community really afraid that this woman, Connie Estrada, would have me arrested on some sort of made-up charge. They were coming to my home quite often, just on her verbal complaints, and as you see now, refusing to take any evidence of these texts as for filing charges against her, or any of this evidence I'm showing as evidence of fraud or perjury. Again, also just like her daughter, using "you are a pedophile" as you are in her text, and having you arrested, which was something they enjoyed threatening me with, and calling me a hookah ass hoe is another one, because they went and somebody put me on a sex worker site, and I began receiving text from all sorts of men. Again, I started responding because I wanted to know where the texts were coming from, where the website was. It turns out it was Craigslist, but all sorts of lovely text I was getting. So again, to the Saguache County Sheriff's Department, I am offering you this evidence of fraud, and reminding you of the definition of fraud and harassment and perjury for Connie Estrada and hopefully other members of the Baca Grande Property Owners Association. And again, to those of you with concerns about Crestone, Colorado, I appreciate you watching this video, and I too pray for a raised consciousness to stop this behavior. Thank you again for watching.